Yeah, big show coming up today, Nick. But first up, we're going to do a high-intensity burn.
That's exactly right. It's regeneration, Hardy, that we're looking at today. And high-intensity burning is one of the more controversial things that Forestry Tasmania does.
Yes.
This is to demonstrate why they do it.
From the moment a coop is approved for harvest, even before any tree is felled, forestry planners are already thinking about the regeneration of that coop and the next 90 years or so. One of the biggest parts of that regeneration is fire.
The reason for the big burn is to prepare a very good seed bed. We know in nature that the way eucalypts regenerate in nature is you have a big intense wildfire. That triggers a massive release of seed from the canopy of the trees. That seed falls onto ground that's been recently burnt, which is the very best starting point for eucalypt seed. The burnt forest has let all the light reach the forest floor, and away comes a new crop. So what we're doing is mimicking the way nature regenerates these forests.
It clears away a lot of the logging debris, and it also heats the soil and it conditions the soil in something we call the ash bed effect. So simply removing the logging debris by scraping it away doesn't leave the soil in as good a condition for the eucalypt seedlings as if we remove that by burning. We make the soil much better for the eucalypt seedlings when we do the burning.
Achieving a good ash bed is so important to the regeneration of native forest that planting a fire on a coop takes months or even years.
We really start the planning process back when we're planning the area for harvest. We've got to be sure that we have the right boundaries, the right slopes within our coop, and then as the harvesting's finished, we then start to prepare our edges. We put tracks around the edge.
Before a burn can take place, everything needs to be spot on. This includes weather and wind, humidity, and the coop needs to be drier than the surrounding forest. The hotter the burn, the better the ash bed. So the fire is lit from the outside in using a special gel which is dropped from above.
Well, what we're trying to achieve is what we call a convection column, and that means igniting the fuel in the centre of the burn. And then we gradually light out toward the edges, and what we actually form is like a chimney effect. So we're drawing air in from all around the edge of the fire, and that helps us control the fire.
Now, the thing about your high-intensity burn is that once it gets going, is what it does, it creates its own weather. There was no wind when we started burning this thing.
No, there's no wind now, and then it sucks it all up in a big column of smoke.
And that drives the fire. They can steer the fire.
Yep.
The smoke goes up.
I should steer it over that way a bit.
Oh, it's in my eyes. With the convection working properly, the smoke is kept under control. Planners using high-tech smoke modelling provided by the Weather Bureau, making sure the smoke stays as far away from populated areas as possible.
All right, so once the fire goes out, you're left with this, and you can actually see where the fire has burned up to, and it hasn't encroached over where it was not meant to go. It was a good burn, this one.
That's right. You're also left with a bit of a mess,
Massive mess.
Stuff laying around, but this stuff is actually very important to the regeneration process.
Well, this is pretty typical of the logs that are left behind after the fire. They're burnt on one side, but if you were to break them open in the middle, still very wet and rotten. Lots of insects and fungi living inside there. Really important to keep this throughout the coop after the fire as habitat, and you can see there's quite a bit left after here.
With the leftover woody debris providing habitat for fungi and insects and providing shelter for growing seedlings, the regeneration process is as close to a natural wildfire as possible. Okay, so the time has come that we sow the seed, and this seed, this mixture of seed of all the different species taken from this area, is worth tens of thousands of dollars a kilo. So now we just spread it out there.
And that seed you don't just spread with a little hand spreader, you need one of those. That's gardening. To keep the same genetics and the right mix of species, the seed is collected from the same area as it is sown, the sowing process using a GPS, a helicopter and the correctly measured amount of seed.
Eucalypts, as we know, are very widespread across Australia, but they're also very well adapted locally to a given site, and on any given site you might have a slightly different genetic type of the eucalypts. You'll have a different species mix on a local site, and we're very concerned that we put back on the site exactly the same mix of trees with the same genetics as was growing on the site, so that we give the site all the chances in the world of growing back a forest just as good as the forest that was growing there before.
Regeneration in native forests is designed to mimic nature. Typically, seeds from the trees are collected during harvesting, the debris is burned to provide a natural seedbed, and the seeds are re-sown to create a vibrant young forest.
It will grow for up to 90 years, storing carbon, providing habitat for wildlife and protecting biodiversity until the cycle of harvesting and regeneration begins again.
And here's the result. After just 1 year, the coop is scattered with little trees like this.
The story of regeneration in Tasmania's native forests. After the break, the story of trees on farms.